Welcome back, everybody, to the Catholic Convert Show. It is me, Jeff, and that over there is Ed. It's Monday, May 13th, and Monday's my favorite day of the week. Why? Because I get to sit on my porch drinking coffee and mock all of my neighbors for working 9 to 5s. I'm only half kidding.
It's something to be said for that, though. Um, yeah, I mean, the rest of us fools actually go out and well, I was going to say work for a living, but you do work for a living. You just do it from your front porch, which is nice. I think we're all actually jealous, Jeff. We'd like to do that as well. I know I would.
Yeah, like I said, I'm only half kidding. I work blue collar jobs my entire life. I only got lucky, quote unquote, lucky, uh, to be able to do what I do now, because I
Mm.
beat my face into the laptop keyboard for 5 years straight. But I do enjoy it. Um, so going over the headlines of this past weekend, I
Oh
found
boy.
one that, quite frankly, pissed me off. A lot of people have already talked about it. I've talked about it, but it happened on Saturday in Abbeville, Louisiana, where parishioners were stopped as a
Mm.
teen with a rifle tried to enter the church during uh, a mass where 60 children were inside, waiting to take their first Holy Communion. Now, fortunately, no one was hurt. As soon as the 16-year-old suspect started to enter the church, a group of alert and willing to take action parishioners rushed to the door, grabbed a hold of him, disarmed him, drug him outside, and then held him in custody. Uh, and they put in very nice language in the headlines. He was escorted outside, but they held him in custody until the police arrived. Now, the kid has been obviously arrested. He's charged with terrorizing the church, 2 counts of possession of a firearm by a juvenile, and he was dressed in all black, typical weirdo child who probably didn't get pushed into enough lockers in school, is now uh, awaiting some kind of evaluation, a mental health evaluation at one of the hospitals there in Louisiana. Now, the church issued a statement. The statement was released by the Diocese of Lafayette, and it thanked the police and it thanked the parishioners for swift response, and they're grateful for both of the parishioners and the police for acting so quickly. But now the church plans to have uniformed law enforcement officers outside its masses from now on, out of what they're calling an abundance of caution. And it's still urging anyone, because I guess they had to cancel the mass. Those details are not in here. Would have made a much better statement if they said, we're just going to keep going and finished it. But obviously, I understand why they didn't. But they're urging anyone who's still seeking a first Holy Communion to do it at the next available mass. Now, this is only a few weeks, maybe a month after we saw that video go around of the guy who walked up. I think it might have been a Protestant church. A guy walked in, pointed a pistol directly at the pastor, and squeezed the trigger.
Yeah.
But he was lucky um, that the pistol didn't go off. Like the gun jammed, and then you see one of the
Mm.
parishioners do the whole sprint down the aisle, vault over the railing there, and then take the guy to the ground, disarm him, hold him. And that only comes 1 month after we saw, uh, I believe his name was Bishop Emmanuel in Australia, was attacked during a live stream of the mass, where the individual was trying to stab him with a switchblade, but it failed to open properly, and so the bishop only ended up receiving like blunt force trauma from like the butt of the knife or whatever. and the attacker ended up severely cutting through his fingers. I guess it was a folding switchblade, and it folded down. And so while he was hitting, he was just jamming the sharp part of the blade into his knuckles with the dull part um, into the bishop. And I'm seeing all this, and I can't help but wonder why we're all of a sudden seeing more attacks on Christian churches, whether they're Catholic, whether they're Protestant. We're seeing an uptick on violent attacks towards clergy, towards parishioners. I mean, we've all seen the video and heard of the case of the shooter that walked into the church in Texas. And fortunately, one of the ushers, former police officers, turned around and John Wicked the guy in the face with a single shot and ended it, which, thank God for that too, saved countless people and prevented countless injuries. But just the entire thought of it, the idea that someone is going to walk into a house of worship and attack people is one that really pisses me off. And I think I said it yesterday, you know, as I try to be a good Catholic, uh, I fall really short of that. But, there's that Mother Angelica type compassion that I try to exhibit to everyone I come into contact with. But when people are trying to attack churches and parishioners and clergy, I try to remind everybody that, the Crusaders were really good Catholics too. And there's two sides of that coin. Someone wants to make the argument that, well, Christ rebuked Peter when he cut the ear off of one of the men that came to arrest him. Well, Christ rebuked that man because that was preventing the fulfillment of the covenant. Christ had to be crucified, right? And that would have stopped Christ from being crucified. And if that had have happened, then there would be no resurrection, and we wouldn't have the church as we know it today. Now, that doesn't mean that we're supposed to just let people come and start attacking our flocks. It doesn't mean that we're supposed to start letting people come and attack our shepherds and our houses of worship. I'm borderline on saying, you know what? Everyone at every parish should be packing. I mean, I'm not very worried about anything happening at my parish because, as far as I know, I think my priest is packing too. But there is a large number of people here in the South that if you were to search people in my parish, you would find that they were all collectively better armed than a National Guard armory, which is a great thing, right? But the fact that we have to be on guard like that because we have these pathetic individuals coming in to try to attack these churches, it boils my blood. Even, discussing it now, it irritates me. But, uh, dude, why do you think we're seeing such an uptick of it now as compared to past couple of years? Because vandalism has always been an issue, but now we're seeing a huge uptick on violent attacks or attempted violent attacks on churches.
Oh, that is it's what we would call a loaded question, and I think it's very nuanced. There's so much that goes into that. But first, I'd like to say, I mean, first of all, you walk into a church in Louisiana with a rifle, it's probably not a very smart move. I've not been to Louisiana, but I've seen enough TV to know that probably there's going to be a few people in that church that are packing, and it's probably not the best place to walk into and try to cause a stir. But so thank God that that worked out the way it did, and that situation was put to rest. Um, Also, I have no issue with there being armed individuals in churches. I know that in one of the, we've discussed the fact that I attend a few different churches, and I'm not going to mention any names on this one, but um, one of the churches that I attend, I was involved in some meetings 4 or 5 years ago when they put a plan in place based on these kind of attacks, and they put together a schedule and they recruited a number of law enforcement officers that are parishioners, and they would sign up for particular masses, and they are uh, spaced out when you walk into the church. Every section of the church has one of these officers he's just attending mass like he normally would on a Sunday, but he's sitting in a particular area so that he has a good view of what's going on, who's coming in, who's going out. And so, again, the vast majority of parishioners have no idea that this is going on, but there are uh, armed parishioners in the pews at every single Saturday evening and Sunday mass. I know a few of the guys who have signed up, and I know what masses they cover, and I have no issue with that. I mean, these are people that are trained to use these weapons and are trained to subdue individuals that might come in looking to do harm on a massive scale like that. So I am all for that. Now, as far as why these attacks are taking place, um, I think the answers are obvious, or at least should be, that whether it's your personal life, your family life, your community life, your parish life, uh, your state, your country, there's something that makes that life whole, and part of that is God. And when you remove God from any aspect of life, it leaves a void. And we know who is more than welcome, or who's more than happy to fill that void, and that's Satan. So, you remove God from your life, Satan fills that void. You remove God from your government by expanding abortion laws and things like that. Satan's more than happy to step in there, and we've gone really kind of overboard, I think, in the last several years to try to secularize our governments and our neighborhoods, and things like that. And I think I think Satan's having a field day. I think he's more than happy to step in and fill that void that's being left there. And I think we're going to see more and more of that. Um, Unfortunately, so that would be my guess on that. It's just that we're creating a playground for Satan, and he's running wild. I mean, if you look at it, you look at all these the people that are involved in these kind of attacks and things like that, and you got to look at their home life. You're gonna, 99% of the time, you're gonna find out it's it's a broken home they come from. Usually, dad is nowhere to be found. Um, God is certainly not part of the picture. This is not. They're not coming from a family where they're sitting down and saying grace before every meal. That's a given. And I remember, and this is about 3 or 4 years ago, in response to another a school shooting that had taken place. I sat down and I did a little research because I had a theory on it, and I went through and of the at that point when I did the research of the most recent 29 school shootings, 28 of the shooters had no father in their life. 28 out of 29 had no father in their life. And I think this is part of it. I mean, this again, it goes back to Satan. Satan hates the family. He hates families that are whole. He hates communities that are whole. So, just to summarize again, you take God out of any situation, and Satan's going to move right in there. And I think that's what we're seeing on a massive scale these days.
And I agree with all of that. Another thing that I've seen is unfortunately, it's one of the misconceptions that I had about Christianity uh, prior to becoming Catholic was that there's no balls left in Christians. You know, I mean, I'm not trying to create a division with this statement, but the people that are the most vehement anti Christians right? Whether it's with physical attacks, whether it's with, online rhetoric or whatever, none of them will say the same thing about Muslims. They will not say the same thing about Hindus. They will not say the same thing about the Jewish community. They will not say the same thing about Buddhists, for that matter, right? And I'm thinking it's because they're afraid to. They're afraid of what would happen if they did. Would they get reprimanded, to put it lightly? Would they get reprimanded by the individuals? I mean, I'm pretty sure if you walked into a synagogue or a mosque or uh, I don't know what the church's equivalent is in Hinduism, a temple maybe, and you tried to pull something like this, it would probably not end well for you, right? But there seems to be this overarching misconception that Christians as a whole are weak and helpless and reluctant to engage in any kind of conflict. Like, is this, I don't know, weak religion, right? I'm like, well, Christ told people to sell their cloak and buy a sword. Peter's ministry was conducted with a sword up the entire time, right? These people were, as far as the apostles go, they were martyred violently. And yeah, I just picked up Orthodoxy again by G.K. Chesterton, and I was
It's a
reading
good one.
through the section. Oh, it is. And I was reading through the section of the what he calls kind of the hypocritical elements of Christianity. One of the things that he hated about it was it seemed far too weak, far too unwilling to fight. But at the same time, he also saw that, as far as these contradictions go, that the church has spread probably more blood across the world, as far as ancient history goes, than a lot of others. And I'm not saying that every Christian should go out and start, you know, engaging in violent activities or hurting other people because that's antithetical to the faith. But there is the misconception of where turn the other cheek comes in. And it doesn't mean let them keep hurting you. Turn the other cheek isn't uh do nothing, just continue to be beaten and martyred. Turn the other cheek means, is that all you got? Try the other one because you'll never beat me. Right? That's where turn the other cheek. That's what people misunderstand about the whole turn the other cheek thing when it comes to reading scripture. Well, you're just supposed to let them hurt you. No, you're supposed to show them that go ahead, that didn't hurt. Take the other cheek. Now I'm out of cheeks. Now it's your turn.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. It is a misconception there, and I think that stemming off of that is this idea that Christians in general, Catholics in particular, are very tolerant and accepting of just about any behavior, and I think that's where some of this comes from. That they and honestly, some of that comes from the church. We do have some very weak bishops and cardinals out there that are giving that impression that any behavior at all is acceptable. We're not going to retaliate. We're not going to do anything about it. We are just going to lay down and let it happen. Um, and and that's a problem. That is part of the problem. Um, I mean, you look at it. You look at over the last few years. You were mentioning earlier something about like the vandalism in churches that has been on an uptick. How many churches have been burnt to the ground the U.S. and in Canada, hundreds and hundreds of churches, and um, you never see anything done about it. You never see any arrests made. Never see anyone being prosecuted for these crimes. So I think the message is going out that that yeah, it's okay to, if you want to make a big statement, if you want to make a big message, it's okay to do that at the expense of the church, because they're not going to do anything about it. And I mean, in one respect, yeah, I mean, you have to say it doesn't really matter if we do anything about it, because that person is going to pay for their sin once they meet Christ and some years later. But I think that we do need to hold people responsible for their actions here on earth as well, especially when it involves killing of Christians or Catholics, destruction of houses of worship, vandalism, all these sort of things. But yeah, I think people just get this idea that um, Catholics are going to turn the other cheek, and so have at it. If you want to get your point across, that's a great place to do it.
Yeah, and it confuses me why people think that we're just going to take it and we wouldn't fight back with violence and extreme force. When if you look at the pontifical gendarme, you know, the Vatican special police, the Swiss Guard, all of them collectively, those are probably some of the most dangerous individuals on the planet. I mean, they are trained killers charged with protecting the faithful in Vatican City and the Holy Father. I mean, you see these guys walking around with these slick Italian suits, but underneath they've got a spray and pray MP5 right under their suit jacket. I don't, you know,
Yeah.
uh, don't start nothing, won't be nothing, you know. But it's wild to me that they think that nothing is going to happen, and well, I wouldn't say wild, but until something does happen, like we have seen in some of these churches, these people walk in, they try to shoot somebody, then a parishioner stands up, like that retired police officer in Texas, and then he sends one right through the brain and says, "No, not here, not today." And then, but that receives criticism. That receives criticism from people outside of religious communities. Well, if you believe in God and God's supposed to protect you, why do you carry the gun? And those people are just exhausting, because those are the kind of people that can't describe what they would feel like if they didn't have breakfast this morning. Um, but if anybody in the church does anything to defend themselves against violence, it's criticized. If they sit there and take it, they're mocked. But here's the thing: when Christ left us his church, we were informed. The apostles were informed. The church was informed that it is going to be hard. You are going to be attacked. You are going to be ridiculed and mocked and martyred. It's not supposed to be easy. And so the people that are within the church and within faithful communities trying to figure out, well, what's the right answer? How do I stop being mocked for being weak? But how do I avoid being criticized for not being weak? The answer is accept being criticized for not being weak, because the only ones who are criticizing you are the weak ones. We're all called to be shepherds. We're all called to protect the innocent. And if you have to protect the innocent by inflicting corporeal harm on the wicked, then so be it. Because it's an even greater sin to allow the innocent to be slaughtered and do nothing about it.
It absolutely is, and it does always surprise me when people have um, that thought process, and I've seen it on Twitter and things like that, where uh, a tragedy happens to a person of faith, particularly a Christian or more specifically a Catholic, and someone will say, "Well, where's your God now? How come he didn't protect your house from that storm? How come he didn't protect your family member from cancer? How come he didn't do this, do that, do that?" And obviously, it just shows an ignorance to the faith and to what we believe, because as you're mentioning, Christ didn't promise us any of that. In fact, he promised us quite the opposite. He tells us in this world you will have trouble. Um, so it's just, I don't know. I just have to shrug when I see people make those kind of comments about you know, if if um if bad things happen to you, either your God is a false God, or maybe he doesn't agree with with you and your particular faith because he's allowing bad things to happen to you. So again, as I say, we all know that that's not the case. That, and I'm sure, Jeff, we could spend a few hours discussing um, tragedies and difficulties that have befallen our particular families, our particular family members, or communities, and things like that, because that's not what it's all about. It's all about surviving those elements in this world so that we get to the next, and handling those situations in a proper way, in a proper manner, and responding to them properly and with the right attitude. Um, and being thankful for the good that does come into our lives. So yeah, I don't know. It's crazy that the whole thing is. I mean, I was when I read that article though, when it popped up about that, was it Abbeville, Louisiana, whatever. I was like, I could not believe that went down without anyone being injured at all. That was just wonderful. But again, it was because there was a church that was prepared, and parishioners that were prepared. So there is definitely something to be said for that. And I don't think you're right. I mean, I don't think God ever said we're not allowed to defend ourselves. He never said we have to just lay down and let bad things happen to us. Um, I wouldn't see what the point of that would be anyway. So if you can subdue one of these people prior to them causing damage, uh, yeah, I'm on board with that. That is not an issue. And thank God we do have people in these parishes that are willing to do something about it. Because I've also seen some videos of people going up and and tackling the priest at the altar, or like messing with the Eucharist, or any number of things like that. And then I'm looking around at the video and I'm saying, there's a lot of young, strong men in those pews. Why are they doing nothing? Because I mean, I don't know. Well, actually, I should say I do know. If it were you, Jeff, if it was in your church, if it was my church, I think we'd be two of the first people to react if someone was going up there and abusing the priest, abusing the Eucharist. I mean, I know that I would certainly jump up there and do whatever I needed to do to subdue such an individual. Um, and we need to have more strong people like that, men and women, whoever's willing to go up there and do something about it. But the attacks are going to continue, Jeff. This is the world we've created. This is the world we live in right now. Um, I said earlier, we've taken God out of the picture, and this is the result of that.
Oh, I agree. When you were talking about the uh the people to say, well, where is your God now, and all this other, one of the famous stories that hit me about that was Governor Greg Abbott of Texas. He's a Catholic convert. Uh, but when he was younger, he was injured and paralyzed below the waist and left in a wheelchair. Well, someone said, your God is the one that put you in that wheelchair. And rather than try to get into whatever kind of argument this guy was uh, trying to instigate, Governor Abbott just said, no, God and his grace is what allowed a young man who's trapped in a wheelchair to accomplish as much as I did and still become governor of Texas. God is not absent from the event, but he is most visible in the response. When you see someone's house get taken by a tornado and they go, "Oh, well, look at these churchgoers. They lost everything. Where is your God now?" And then the next day, you see the entire community pulling together, rebuilding this guy's house, helping them with food and setting up meal trains. There, that's where God is. God is more visible in the response.
Yeah.
And that's
I try,
that's what I say to everyone.
yeah. Yeah, I do the same thing. I try to remind people of that all the time. God's looking for what is your response to this? Because the tragedy is the result of our fallen nature. Whatever takes place, it's the result of what happened in the garden. We know that there's going to be difficulties in this life. Those aren't sent by God, but He does want to see what your response is going to be. And like you bring up Governor Abbott, and perfect example because he could have done what the devil would have wanted him to do in that case is say, "Hey, look at me. I'm paralyzed. My life is basically over. I'm not going to get involved in this, that, or the other thing. I'm not going to wind up getting into politics, becoming governor of one of the largest states in the union, anything like that. I'm just going to curl up in a ball and let people come and take care of me because my life
Or be
is,
angry
is
with God.
or be angry, guy. Exactly, yeah. Um, and angry at God. I mean, that's something I hear often. I'm thinking, anger is one of the many gifts, if you will, for lack of a better word, that we have from Satan. He loves people to be angry, and he specifically loves them to be angry at God. But I also tell people, I say, show me the situation you've been in personally, or that your family has been in, or that a community's been in. Show me any situation where anger has solved the problem, that anger has made things better. You're not going to be able to show me that because it doesn't happen. You know, anger solves nothing. Anger prevents you from buckling down and tackling the problem head on or facing the problem head on. And so yeah, you love to see stories like his, especially with him being a convert. I tell you what, man, the further I go on this whole Catholic ride that I've been on since birth, the more I see that if I had to put together a list of like the 100 best Catholics I'm aware of, probably 99 of them would be converts. It's amazing, but I think it's because the reason they become converts and to Catholicism is because they were seeking the truth, and once they found the truth, they kind of latched onto it, and nobody's going to pry it out of their hands. So that kind of ferocity, if you will, it creates really strong Catholics, and I love seeing it. So good for Governor Abbott, good for any other Catholic converts out there that are just out there every day, and spreading the word and trying to bring other people along for the ride.
Yeah, that is the axiom. I think Father Dave Dwyer was talking about it several weeks ago that converts make better Catholics, and it was obviously there's the newness, you know. Well, I guess it's very similar to a honeymoon phase when you enter into a new relationship or a new marriage. You're in the honeymoon phase for the first couple of years, right? But with Catholicism, that honeymoon phase doesn't wear off for the converts. And cradle Catholics, God love them, they never get to experience the honeymoon phase of Catholicism because it happens to them when they're like 6 months old at their baptism, and then going through RE and catechism and then getting their first Holy Communion and their confirmation in their teens or early 20s. Like, okay, I've known this my entire life. I didn't have to discover the truth. I was told the truth and grew up in the truth from the very beginning. When someone's walking around in the dark, struggling and stumbling, when they finally find the light, they're more grateful for having finally found it than someone who's had it the entire time. So that makes sense. And uh, it's funny, both of the priests at my parish, the parish priest and the parochial vicar, are both converts. The parish priest converted from being a Southern Baptist when he was 13, and our parochial vicar, he's 75, but he came over from the Anglican tradition. And I don't think there's a single priest in my area, and we've got probably 15, 20 Catholic churches near me. I think all of the priests are converts. Now that I think of it, so and funny enough, during the first few months of me converting to Catholicism, I was immediately looking at what can I do to become more involved in the church, and how can I bring my church life even deeper into my personal life. Like, well, obviously, I can't be a priest because, I'm married, I've got kids. But then I'm like, deacons, though, because a deacon can't get married after becoming a deacon, but married men can become deacons. Whether or not I go down that route, because it's going to involve obviously college and getting a couple of degrees in theology and this, that, and the other. I don't know. I'm on the fence about that. But it's that freshness of discovering the truth for the first time, even when it was right in your face all along, because so many of my friends are either lifelong Catholics or converts, and they're like, "Bro, you need to get in here," for years, and I'm like, "Ah, no, 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 whatever. I'm not going to disrespect your faith, but no." Next thing you know, I'm here, right, and I'm telling everybody else, "Bro, you need to get in here." But when you do get in, that freshness, that zeal and the enthusiasm you have for God, it's it's hard to shake off, and you don't want to shake it off, but you're like, "Man, why am I so zealous now?" I made a joke earlier today that when men join the Catholic Church, they will either become St. Thomas Aquinas, or they'll become a crusader, and there's no in between, right? They're
Yeah,
immediately going to adopt, I am a
yeah,
theologian, and they go deep into that side of it, or they become, ready to take up arms in the army of God. Like they adopted the knight kind of mentality, you know,
yeah,
and they go all in on it. And
yeah.
it's hard to balance though sometimes, but I try.
It is. Yeah, it is a shame that's one thing that's lacking in most cradle Catholics, and I'll be honest, I was one of them. I mentioned to you probably a few weeks ago that um, for the first 45 years of my life, I thought, "Hey, I'm a great Catholic. I say grace before every meal. I'm in church every Sunday morning. I'm a pretty good guy. I throw a couple bucks in the basket every Sunday. I've got this covered. I've got the Catholic thing down." And then just one day during Mass, I'm reciting the Our Father like I had thousands of times before, and I just started bawling like a baby, and I just felt like this hand on my shoulder, and I heard Christ's voice in my head saying, "I deserve so much more. I deserve so much more than just showing up showing up on Sunday and throwing a couple dollars in a basket and saying grace before meals. Uh, there's so much more to it. I expect so much more from you." And it just shook me. It really shook me to my core. Um, and I'm thankful. I'm so thankful that I had that experience because the very following week, I became a founding member of a men's group at our church that's been going strong for, uh, you know, 13, 14 years now. Um, and I became a CCD instructor and a Bible study facilitator and, started my own charity to help the homeless, and I give talks about the Rosary and about Mary and anything else Catholic that people want to hear about, and I still feel every day when I wake up I got to do more, buddy. I got to do more. I got to add more to the list. So I'm lucky because the little the pilot light in me never went out. You know what I mean? I mean, the pilot, maybe the flame wasn't full, um, but the pilot light was still there, and it just needed to be cranked up a little bit, and it happened. But I get it. I mean, people that have been Catholic all their life, they do those basic things like going to church on Sunday and things like that. They do it just because the same reason they go to their job. You know, their job pays the bills, and going to church on Sunday, they think pays the spiritual bill. I've got this covered. I'll go to heaven. There's no excitement. There's no zeal, and that's what I love about converts, adult converts specifically because they've got that excitement. They were looking for something, and when they found it, they grabbed a hold of it, and they're saying, "I'm not letting go of this." And I think that's always I tell people that yeah, maybe you've been a lifelong Catholic, you're a cradle Catholic, but and you don't need to convert, but you need to revert. You know, you need to get back to why your family at some point, either your parents or your grandparents, your great grandparents, somebody somewhere down the line decided that being Catholic was very, very important to the survival of the family. And you've got to get back to that. You've got to find out why they made that choice, and you've got to expand on that. You got to keep it going. You got to keep it going for the next generations, you know? So I have just the utmost respect for converts. And I've also said that most converts, just because of the way the Catholic Church works as opposed to other Christian denominations, is a lot of people give up a lot. You know, they'll have family members, friends, coworkers who say, "You're becoming a Catholic? That's it. I'm done with you. I want nothing to do with you." And so imagine losing brothers and sisters and maybe parents or someone over such a choice. If you were a pastor at one of these places, now you've given up your livelihood, and then you're looking for a
Yeah.
job, and they say, "Well, what's your experience?" "Well, I've been a pastor for the last 17 years." Okay, well, how does that help us here at Spacely Sprockets? Well, we don't need a pastor. We need
No
someone.
one in the audience knows who Spacely is. Come on,
Well,
man.
everybody is Spacely Sprockets.
Nobody listening to this has any idea what Spacely Sprockets is.
Well, in any case,
But no,
but
you're talking about how you felt compelled to do more, and so you became a CCD instructor and doing this for Bible studies and uh, the ministry with the homeless, the charity. People are going to hear that and they'll say, "So you are trying to work your way into heaven," and that's not the case. Like people always say,
no,
I,
not
I
even close.
hate the I hate the once saved, always saved morons, who think that, well, as long as I ask for forgiveness on my deathbed, it'll be okay. As if they're somehow able to get one over on God. Well, I said the words. It's not a password, right? God's not fire insurance for you saved to the last minute to say, okay, forgive me. I'm sorry. Da, da, da. None of this crap. But the whole point of doing works, right? It's the same thing. And no, works will never, ever grant salvation, right? But it is the same thing as what I was talking about earlier. When you find God in the response to the tragedy, when those people come together, when there's a meal train set up for a mom who just got diagnosed with cancer and she's doing everything she can and her family is struggling as she goes through chemo, and people come together and they set up a meal train. That is good works. Is that trying to buy your way into heaven? No. And anybody who thinks that has a sub 85 IQ. But what it is showcasing love. It is showcasing goodness. And God is all love. God is all loveness. Catholics don't do works to buy salvation, you know. And yes, we are very much against, you know, what's his name, crooked pope's selling of indulgences. We're very much against that and we condemn that, right? But how do you tell someone is a follower of Christ when they are Christ like? And what would Christ be doing? Protestants love to use the what would Jesus do? Okay, fine, let's play that game. What would Christ be doing if he saw someone suffering, someone in need? He would be there to help them. That is what these works are. These works are pointing to Christ, just like the Blessed Mother points to Christ at the wedding of Cana and says, do whatever he tells you. We are doing good works in the name of Christ because that's what Christ wants us to do, not to buy salvation, not to earn salvation. We are saved by the grace of God and we'll never deserve it. And it's a gift that is given freely, right? And the faith alone saving thing? No, because you know who else believes in God? Satan. You know who else believes in God? People who hate God. Okay? But these works are not for the purchase or the earning of salvation. The good things that you do for your church and for the community, the good things that I try to do and that my wife does and that everybody else in all of the parishes and all these Catholic charities, they are not trying to buy salvation. They are honoring Christ and living as Christ wants us to live with love and charity. I talked about this before on the previous episodes. The word love appears numerous times in the Bible, but the English language sucks about differentiating things because New Testament Greek, the OG language it was written in, three different words for love: eros, which is romantic love; philos, which is the love of friendship; and agrippa, which is charity. And the love others as you would love yourself. Guess which one of those Greek words it was? It wasn't eros and it wasn't philos. We're not doing works to earn salvation. We're doing works because God, Christ, who was God made man, commanded us to do these works in his name for the glory of him. And the people who can't understand that, again, probably shouldn't vote because there needs to be a limit on where your competency level is. But I can't stand the accusations
Yeah,
that,
absolutely.
oh well, Ed, you're doing all of these things trying to buy your salvation. No, no, no. Christ paid for my salvation. But I still have to live a life that Christ commanded me to live.
Yeah. I think about it, like, I try to get across with the CCD kids, um, like, if it's your birthday, if it's Christmas, mom, dad, grandma, whoever gives you this wonderful special gift that you've been wanting and you've been asking for the last year and a half or whatever, and probably when hopefully one of the first things that comes out of your mouth is thank you so much." And to me, that's what I'm doing when I do anything for for somebody. It's my way of saying thank you to Christ because, like, in my house, as it should be in any Catholic household, there is a crucifix in every single room, and so it's kind of a interesting phenomenon that even though the crucifixes have been there for a very long time, almost any time I walk into a room, my eyes are automatically drawn to that crucifix wherever it is on the wall. And but I think it's done purposely. I think that Christ does that for me because I see that crucifix and I see the sacrifice that was made for me and I'm thinking, yeah, thank you. Thank you, Christ. I'm going to show you how thankful that I am. And so when I go out into the world and I see either homeless people that are suffering, I see Christ suffering. When I see people that need to be educated on their faith, I see Christ in them, and I see the thirst, and I see the desire on their part. And so yeah, I never even think of them as works because I get so much out of it. I love teaching the eighth graders getting ready for the confirmation. I love when we have a Bible study discussion and somebody who's been struggling with a particular concept within the faith for years maybe says, "Ah, you know, Ed, because of something you said tonight, I finally get it. I finally understand that concept. Thank you." And that means so much to me because here's somebody, not because I was the one who showed them, but because now here's someone who's a little bit closer to Christ. Here's somebody who understands their faith a little deeper. And so yeah, I never look at any of the stuff that I do as works. I look at them as take joy in them. I'm thinking how wonderful it is that I'm in a position that I can do this for Christ. That I can here's another avenue for me to say thank you for your sacrifice. Because Christ's sacrifice didn't end on Good Friday. It continues day after day, hour after hour. It just keeps going. And so yeah, that's what you were alluding to it earlier. St. Paul said, they will know we are Christians by our love. And so I teach CCD because I love those kids and I want the best for them. I teach Bible study because I love my parishioners, my fellow parishioners, and I want the best for them. I want them to find Christ. I want them to find a way to have. I I work with the homeless because I desperately love those people, and I want them to have a better life. So absolutely, yeah, we one of the biggest misunderstandings with Catholics that thinking that we think that we're going to somehow slog our way into heaven by working every third Saturday at a soup kitchen or something. It couldn't be any further from the truth. But who do you got there for our saint of the day, young man?
Well, I've got Our Lady of Fatima, and this is one of my favorite, favorite Marian apparitions. I'm still torn between which one, whether it's Our Lady of Fatima or Our Lady of Guadalupe, but again, Our Lady of Fatima is today. So, for people who don't know, between May 13th and October 13th of 1917, three Portuguese children, Francisco and Jacinta Marto, and their cousin Lucia dos Santos, received apparitions of Our Lady at Cova da Iria which was near Fatima. It's a city 110 miles north of Lisbon. And Mary asked the children to pray the rosary for world peace, for the end of World War One, for sinners, and for the conversion of Russia. Mary also gave the children three secrets. Following the deaths of Francisco and Jacinta in 1919 and in 1920, respectively, Lucia revealed that the first secret in 1927 was concerning devotion to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. The second secret was a vision of hell. And when Lucia grew up, she became a Carmelite nun. She died in 2005 at the age of 97. Uh, Pope John Paul II uh, directed the Holy See Secretary of the State to reveal the third secret in the year 2000, and it spoke of a bishop in white who was shot by a group of soldiers who fired bullets and arrows upon him. And many people linked this vision to the assassination attempt against Pope John Paul II in St. Peter's Square, which happened on May 13th, wild enough, in 1981. Now, there was also what they call the miracle of the sun. 70,000 people witnessed a strange, slightly dimmer than usual spinning disc in the air that seemed to come straight down towards them before zigzagging back off into the sky and its normal position. Now, that was witnessed by 70,000 people and additionally by people up to 15 and 20 miles away. So that kind of rules out the mass hypnosis kind of thing. But funny enough, it had been raining, the ground was soaked, everybody was wet, but after the ground was dry and everyone's clothes were dry. So just to fan the flames a little bit, I'm going to say put that in your King James version and smoke it.
Very good. Yeah, I was mentioning to you before the show how I don't know these uh either Marian feast days or Marian apparitions seem to really get some non-Catholics up in arms. And I don't truly understand it, but I'm hoping that that some of these things when they see the Catholics celebrating these that they might look into them further, and who knows? We're talking about Catholic converts earlier in the show. Maybe some of these things will be kind of the starting point for some folks to start their conversion to Catholicism, because Our Lady, I mean, she wants nothing more than to lead us to Christ. And it's interesting. We're talking about the Blessed Mother today and about Fatima. And I was just reading, and this is the thing. Here I am. I'm the cradle Catholic in the bunch here, and I still learn every day things that I wasn't aware of beforehand. Um, and I didn't know that when a priest is ordained, that they have this cloth that's called a maniturgium that is used to wipe the chrism from their hands after their hands are consecrated as priests, and that I that it's tradition for that priest after their ordination to give that cloth to their mother, and then the mother holds on to that cloth for the remainder of her life, and then the mother of a priest is buried with that cloth wrapped around her hands.
Mm,
And the idea being that then our Blessed Mother will lead that holy mother of the saint, of the priest, I'm sorry, to Christ, and present this woman to Christ and saying, "Here is the mother of a priest." And when Christ says, "What have you done for me during your lifetime?" She says, "Christ, I gave you a piece of my heart. I gave you my son to serve you as a priest." And man, I mean, I was blown away by that. Again, it's one of these incredible pieces of Catholicism, this tradition that goes back so far, and it's beautiful and it's touching. And I love this. And this is one of the things that keep me fired up about being Catholic. I'm learning every day more about it. And what a beautiful story that is, or and the fact that they do that, and the fact that I learned about this on this feast day, a feast day that celebrates Our Lady. It was even at its special, made it more special to me.
yeah. I think my priest told that same story a little, maybe under a year ago. But when I'd heard it, because he was talking about his mother's birthday, it might have been Mother's Day last year, actually. But yeah, we kind of had the same reaction. I looked over at my 15-year-old's like, so you going to join the seminary? Just trying to push some more people into vocations. But we're going to wrap
Keep us
this
updated on that
show
one.
here. Yeah. I'll try. I mean, he's an altar server now, so it's nudge in the right direction. But we'll wrap this one up and get out of here. Before we go, I want to remind everyone that if you're looking for a habit tracker to help you stick to your daily rosaries, uh, your daily prayers, your daily novenas, whatever it is, if you're trying to live a more holy life, but like everyone else, you end up forgetting the simplest things until the end of the day and you feel like it's too late. Google Play and the Apple App Store. Go and download Holy Habits. It's completely free. Check out the Holiness Hub, where you can get to the root of your root sins. But we're going to wrap it here. And thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And we'll see you tomorrow.